At the 2024 Military Health System Conference, we brought together the Surgeons General to answer your questions about the state of military health and the joint effort required to achieve our shared mission. 1 year later, our joint mission remains the same: to enable the DoD to provide medically ready and ready medical forces. The leaders on this panel are charged with ensuring the mission is not only met, but successful. Leading this panel will be Dr. David Smith, Acting Principal Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Health Affairs and Acting Director for the Defense Health Agency. So over to you, sir.
Thanks very much, and good morning, Military Health System. That's pretty good. Should we do it once more? Good morning, Military Health System. All right. There we go. And I think we had an incredibly good and great day yesterday. Got great wisdom from our senior leadership and the future strategy. And then what about Dan Knosson? Wow, what an inspiring. And I think we've got a great kickoff for today because it is my honor to welcome you to today's Military Surgeon General's Roundtable. And this forum brings together the leaders who are in the forefront of military medicine and really visionaries who have dedicated their careers to safeguarding the health, the readiness, and the resilience of our service members. And as we navigate this era of evolving, genuinely serious global threats, emerging medical challenges, and amazing technological advancements, their collaboration and shared expertise has never been more important and critical. And today's discussion is an opportunity for us to exchange insights, explore innovations, solutions, and reinforce our commitment to optimizing the care for those who we serve. So we have the privilege to have today Lieutenant General Mary Izagari, the Surgeon General of the United States Army, Lieutenant General John DeGoes, the Surgeon General of the U.S. Air Force, Rear Admiral Darren Vai, the Surgeon General of the United States Navy, Rear Admiral Pam Miller, the Medical Officer of the Marine Corps, and Deputy Chief, Bureau of Medicine and Surgery, Reserve Policy and Integration, Major General Lisa Howe, the Director of the Office of the Joint Surgeon General, National Guard Bureau, and last but not least, clearly, Brigadier General John Andrus, the Joint Staff Surgeon. And each of them obviously brings invaluable experience and leadership in shaping military medicine policies, readiness, and patient care. And over the next 2 hours, we'll delve into key issues affecting military health, focusing on operational medicine, force health protection, partnerships, and perhaps even medical modernization. And as your moderator, my role is to ensure a dynamic and productive conversation, but that requires you to, and our audience, to engage thoughtfully and ask the hard questions. And I would encourage our panelists to share their perspectives candidly and look forward to the discussion. So let's begin. And I'd like to invite each panelist to provide brief opening remarks, and we're going to start with Lieutenant General Izagari.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Dr. Smith. And thank you to all the attendees for your investment and engagement in our critical mission. I feel like what we've done today is invite you to our Thursday morning, because every Thursday morning, this group sits down to look and see how we can best serve our soldiers, sailors, airmen, coasties, guardians, Marines, who we exist to ensure that they can go into the fight, not only with their own health, but knowing that the health of their families is protected. So when we talk about why we are here, and what readiness means, we often think about what we do. I find it really useful to go back to the why we do it. And the single slide that I have is one that I shared at AMSIS, and it talks about the why, and it's a quote from Major Jonathan Letterman, but I believe it applies equally to all of the services, in that the purpose of a medical corps is to strengthen the hand of the commanding general or the admiral by keeping the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines in the most vigorous health, rendering it both efficient for enduring fatigue, sounds a little bit like resilience, sounds a little bit like high performance, privation, and for fighting. And so going to our why helps us to understand how we measure success. And so over the course of this panel, I think we'll talk about how each service does that and how we do it together most effectively. For us, we take our marching orders from the Army's Chief of Staff, and he talks about warfighting, he talks about ensuring that forces are ready for combat, he talks about continuous transformation, and he talks about strengthening the profession. And we do all of those in our individual services, whether it's by clearing the battlefield, whether it's by maintaining the highest levels of professionalism within our military treatment facilities, whether it is that continuous transformation. I know we'll talk about modernization today, and what is, for us, transformation and contact doesn't mean a place on the battlefield. It means a way of thinking, of seeing a problem and leading into a solution. And I know each of you is committed to doing that. And then really the underpinning of every single one of those areas is through partnerships. And whether it's partnerships between those working in a military treatment facility and those working in the operational units on post to ensure that we are strengthening the profession together, whether it's partnerships across all of our compos, because so much of medical capability resides within Compo 2 and Compo 3, whether it's partnerships amongst what we do every Thursday morning or with our combined partners. Today's threat looms so large that no one goes it alone. So I'm thrilled to be here today to talk about exactly how we get after that.
Thank you, General Izagiri. So, General DeGoes.
All right. Good morning, everybody. It's an honor to be here representing the Air Force and the Space Force as the 25th Surgeon General of the Air Force. Our mission really hasn't changed. We support one department, two service chiefs, really to fly, fight, and win in air and space. What's really changing, and what I wanted to focus on in this brief time here, is the changing and evolving our 30,900 active duty Air Force medics and our partners in the total force, another 15,000 Guard and Reserve medics, to be successful in a complex, contested environment. I can't say GPC, that's kind of like the Voldemort word right now for the Air Force, but great power competition, large-scale combat ops, complex, contested environment. So you look at that slide, the right side of the slide that's got the purple in there, that my entire career, 35 years, we've primarily, for contests or deployment, it's been supporting the joint force with large Role 3 or theater hospitals, partnered with staging that casualties would funnel into them. And in the air dominance period, really post the fall of the Berlin Wall, thankfully there haven't been a lot of planes falling out of the sky, and so we've really been focused on that joint force mission and joint force presentation. The complex contested environment against a peer or a near peer that can challenge air dominance and make it an almost a fair fight for air superiority requires a new focus for Air Force medicine on Air Force force presentation. So that left side there, when we'd send a flying unit of action, bombers, fighters, whatever, we'd send typically one flight doc and a couple of IDMT, independent duty medical technicians, with the unit of action. And if there were 3 squadrons in that deployable wing, there'd be 3 of those 3-member teams. Well, the success in the future in that contested environment is going to require agility, agile combat employment, dispersed. Some threat rings may change and you may need to move the iron, and medical needs to move with it. And so we spent the last 3 years working with the Air Force A3 on, how are they going to fight and how can we be integrated with them? And so, under air dominance, we were able to crowdsource the medical that the Air Force needed. In this kind of environment on the left there, we need to be training, exercising, certifying, and deploying together as an integrated unit. And so medical will be part of a combat air-based squadron that is, aligned with and rated by the commander of the unit of action. And so, we are now having to focus on Role 1 care, where that'll be return to duty, DNBI, keeping people flying, and then as things change and we move into phase one or phase 2 of an operation, then we would bring in damage control, resuscitation, and surgery. And so, slide. And so this, back one.
Yep.
And so this is just a notional thing where on the far right, that DCW deployable combat wing with the combat air-based squadron has got organic medical. That would be at a main operating base, and they would have the ability to move the iron, the planes, and some medical capability. MGFE is a mission gen force element, would have its own organic medical that would move with it. And then if they needed to move even further because of the threat, they could move to those little ACEs, agile combat employment. That might be a space without a base. And so we've had to now redesign the training and equipment for that organization. How can we hold patients longer? How do we have medics that are multi-capable, capable of holding longer, learning about triage again, which we really haven't had to do, and then the mental health aspects of ongoing, continuous attack and the challenges to our medics and warfighters in that environment.
So we'll go ahead and flip over to the Navy slide here. I think what I'd like to highlight on General Godot's slide was all that blue stuff. That's water. Matter of fact, when I was the PAC fleet surgeon, General Friedrichs was the PAC aft surgeon. This was many moons ago. But he came into my office one day, he goes, oh man, he goes, I don't know what we're gonna do. We have to take all these operations, which always operate out of this hub and spoke model, and we have to distribute them all over these islands. And I'm like, welcome to my world, brother. So I'm gonna focus really on the 3 questions that were kind of asked of us, which is, how do we define readiness? And I'm gonna let Admiral Miller talk for the Marine Corps side and anything she has on the reserve side, sticking more to my OpNav role. But when it comes to readiness, I think you have to start with total sailor readiness. And in all honesty, I always, I'm happy to tell you where the Navy's leading the charge. I'm happy to tell you where we're lagging. Commander Naughton's in the audience. He's actually a prior line officer, clinical psychologist working at OpNav N17. Because like many of you all, it's actually our line side, our PERS side that really runs those programs. They're kind of pre-hospital programs for developing the mind, body, spirit of our sailors. Currently, we are leveraging everything we can from the Army's HTF program, from the Air Force programs, to really build that total resilient sailor that, as you heard General Izagiri can say, even without the help of the medical profession, can be prepared for the fight and stay in the fight. What are the primacies of those, and where are some of the conflicts and competition? We always talk about it, but you hear the, ready medical force, medically ready force. It was actually brought to my attention the other day that we probably need to be a little more clear when we talk about that, because the 4-stars' eyes glaze over when they say it, and they kind of like, I don't really know what you're talking about, Doc. So as we talk about those, I think the primacy of mission, from my service chief's perspective, is our sailors and Marines prepared and ready to go out the door? And so where does health services play in that? So do we, develop, prepare, and deliver ready operators when it comes to the health services end of it? The other side of that is are we delivering the ready medical force and making sure that we have, what I call medical warfighters. And what's ironic in many of our systems, and again, I'll speak mostly from the Navy and the Marine Corps side, those two are in slight competition. Because if you look at where my KSA data is high, you look at where we're generating RVUs, number one, it's my civilian partnerships, and yes, talk about partnerships, I'll hit that real quick. But it's Camp Lejeune, level 2 trauma center, or level 3 trauma center, Portsmouth, level 2 trauma center. That's where my KSAs are getting the best bang for their buck. And I would love to have every one of you all that are wearing this uniform at those centers optimizing your preparedness to go to war. By the same token, and we all know it, Jax is one that we're talking about, we're looking at, I got to make sure that Kings Bay is covered down. I got to make sure that those submariners are ready to get in the fight. I got to make sure that Naval Air Station Jax, that those aviators are ready to get into the fight. And I've got to make sure that the ships out at Mayport for the surface fleet is ready to get into the fight. And that is the conflict that we have to continue to work through as an organization with the constraints of resources. How do we best balance that equation, provide the best readiness with the minimal risk to our senior leadership? I talked briefly about partnerships. Again, like you all, we have those. I probably do use them a little bit differently. We've got some local relationships that go on, but at the higher level for me, it's Cook County, LA County, and UPenn. UPenn and Cook, for me, we send teams, so our ERSS and our ERCS, our small surgical teams, and our en-route care systems go there as a unit and train, and they are actually in a deployed status. So they do 1 year. I've developed with my TICOM surgeons, so with Lanton Pack, a optimized fleet response program, which basically in 1 year we bring their KSAs up to the top of the game, and then the next 2 years they're in a sustainment phase where they can deploy regardless of whether or not those KSAs come back up. I can talk to you. It's based on the work of Dr. Elster, who's also here. But where I'm a little bit different is for those that don't get all their KSAs in the partnerships, that's where I leverage LA County, because they're willing to do much more of a tailored rotation on an individual basis for us. So knowing what someone has going in, we're often lacking in burn care, they'll let us develop a relationship where before they go to their unit certification, they can go through LA County, get that type of care to bring their KSAs up to the top of the game, and then go out, do their certification with the unit, back to the home team, and then be prepared to deploy for the next 2 years. So with that, I think that kind of hits the partnerships, although again, as I mentioned, Lejeune, Portsmouth, and everywhere, DHA is a huge partner with us, obviously. The managed care support contractor is a huge partner for us. And then lastly, we were kind of asked, where do we see some of the gaps? I heard you all say it earlier, but when you get into this, we talk about prolonged field care. I'm an anesthesiologist by formal training, trauma anesthesiologist. I'm going to be honest with you, I don't fully know what that means, because oxygenate, ventilate, maintain perfusion. But I think where I would ask our RDT&E communities, again, the challenge we have, small elements distributed across the battlefield means you have no capacity. But I think we're going the right direction because you heard it, you need agility. Mm-hmm. Where I worry is what are we doing with RDT&E? We know the 10-minute platinum, platinum 10, we know the golden hour, and yes, it exists, and I can talk to you about it, but no, there's nothing magical between minute 59 and minute 101. But where if you look at that second curve, there starts to be secondary injury, that's where I believe we need to be putting a lot of RDT&E, that 3 to 4 hour mark. How do I push that out to 24 hours? How do I push that out to 72 hours so I don't get that secondary organ damage, that reperfusion injury, and I have those patients survive to come back from the battlefield. So those are the two things I throw out as gaps.
Great, thank you. Well, good morning, everybody. Pam Miller, Medical Officer of the Marine Corps, and I do also wear the second hat for Reserve Policy and Integration for the Surgeon General as well. And the one thing that I will say is, we have a significant footprint out of Navy medicine. 20% of Navy medicine, over 8,000 members are assigned in the rank and file of the Marine Corps. And I will tell you that they're around the globe, as you all know, and it's kind of interesting because what we're able to get after in a significant way with the Marine Corps is our operational readiness. We are very integrated in with our line, and we have a clinical readiness, we have operational readiness, we can talk family readiness because it's all part of readiness. But I would say where we shine a little bit is we don't have as much of a problem with our health services getting that operational, whether it's firing your weapon, whether it's going to the gas chamber, because that's fun, or any number of other things. We don't have as much of an issue in that category. And when it comes to clinical readiness, as you know, The Marine Corps has gone through a big transformation. The Commandant set forth on Force Design 2030, which is now just called Force Modernization because it's an ongoing process. And I'm happy to say this time, as opposed to the last couple times that the Marine Corps has gone through a transformation, Health Services is going through a transformation in parallel and in stride instead of as a lagging entity. And a lot of work going on at CD&I, MarCorps, Syscom, McWill, other places to get us aligned and ready to go to fight with the Marine Corps under their current concept of operations. And that's taken a lot of work, and we're looking at redesigning once again what is medical battalion, what is dental battalion, what does our force need to look like to keep up with the fight, to be able to support the Marine Corps at the pointy end of the spear in the facing the pacing threat. Out in, of course, in the Pacific, but as well as that doesn't mean that we don't have to be prepared in every other theater. So we are going through a redesign, transformation, Health Services once again, and our challenges are similar to what the SG mentioned and others. My current, top concerns are prolonged casualty care. We are going to be at the pointy end of the spear, the moment in time of engagement. We will be living through the front end of the contested phase of any type of an operation, and are we going to be able to get the skills in a combat-ready force, but a medically ready force to execute a mission that this generation does not have the combat experience that is going to be required of the people we are putting very far forward. So trying to get those folks ready for something that, quite frankly, nobody sitting in here has actually had to face, and some of the most demanding operational environment since World War II. So what does that mean? We're engaging virtual reality. We're engaging a lot of training, trying to get the highest level of skill in the hands of our corpsmen, because they are ones that are going to be in probably the highest demand, lowest trained individual is going to have a lot riding on their shoulders. So how do we get them the tools in their toolkit? How would we get the arrows in their quiver to face those challenges? So moving out in that area through innovation, experimentation, what does right look like? Prolonged casualty care is a challenge. Going through the entire reconfiguration of the AMALs, and quite frankly, to the SG's point, I'm not sure any of us are 100% sure what right looks like for that, but we're doing our best to posture for that very demanding scenario where we're going to squat and hold on patients for who knows how long. We're all very good at a pickup game. All of us, the services of Joint Force, we're really good at that, but much preferred to be deliberate and very tactical in our preparation. And so it's just a matter of if we fight tonight, we're going to go do that, and we're going to do an outstanding job, and we're going to get them what they need. But it's going to be a bit of a hurry up and configure AMALs and whatnot. But probably prolonged casualty care, getting blood at the point and place of need is a big concern as we look at being scattered across the first and second island chain, and how do we address those challenges. But the biggest, I think, where we get the bang for the buck is when we train across the Joint Force, is when we come together and address these challenges. They're not unique to any one service. They are across the services, and they are shared by our allies and partners in theater. And we have examples in all three of our MEFs and MOR4-RES where we not only partner across the Joint Force to go train as we fight, but also engage with allies and partners to attack some of these challenges, because it will take all of us and everything we have to face the challenges that we're going to have in a future fight. So we just came back from a bit of a battlefield circulation from engaging with Australia and the Philippines, and we've been out to Japan, everywhere that we are getting after integration, not just across the Joint Force, but with allies and partners. And there's many challenges that go with that, but everybody is committed to digging in hard and getting us there. I will tell you that flipping hats over to when I say the total force, I'm talking ACRC, and flipping over to my reserve hat, we have over about 6,600 Navy medicine reserve component sailors that are assigned across all kinds of BSOs. They're with the fleet, they're with the SG, they're with the Marine Corps. We have them in units, and we have our own assignment for standing up operational medicine teams, which we have executed in the past 20 months and are standing up our teams to get ready to go out the door. Interestingly, on the Marine Corps side of the house, We use everything that the SG spoke of at Portsmouth, at Lejeune. We have a lot of green suiters in there with the ERs, with the trauma teams, getting reps and sets, contributing to that capability to be able to provide that trauma capability on those bases. And then we also use MilSIV partnerships to get after unique challenges like burn training, et cetera. But on the reserve side of the house, we almost have the opposite. They don't have as much, my reservists don't have as much of a KSA because they're out there working in trauma centers every day. Our enlisted are a particular challenge. They may drive a FedEx truck, they may not be in a medical community in their civilian engagement. So we focus really heavily on our enlisted and getting them the clinical training. It's less of an issue for our doctors and nurses and medical service corps, but it's almost a flip. So the beauty, and when we are at our very best, is when we have the total force, is when we can blend the talent of the AC and the RC, we can teach and train together, and we can capitalize on that, because the RC needs more of the operational training, and we do that through integration with the AC at a lot of field and training exercises. We support exercises across the globe, but Future Fight is a joint force, it's a total force, AC, RC, Guard and Reserve, and allies and partners. So anything that we are planning or executing that's not in that lens, I think we're wrong. And so this has been a fun few years sitting in this seat as we've been pushing that envelope really hard. And I'm happy to say that I think they're doing a really great job in that arena. But I think that the challenges are the same. The targets that we're shooting at are the same. And for us to properly support the Marine Corps, we have to move at the pace of relevance, and that's the challenge, is how far can we get, how fast, for a Fight Tonight construct that we may or may not be perfectly postured for, but we will execute. So with that, I'll turn it over to Major Howell.
Okay. So good morning. Thank you for the invitation to be here, Dr. Smith. Just grateful to be part of the team here. As everyone's been saying, we are a total joint force. So just out of curiosity, can I just get hands up of how many guardsmen we have here? Very, very few. So good to see some.
The guardsman row.
Well, that's
right
my
there,
team,
yes.
so that doesn't
We can
count.
hardly see it.
Strength in numbers right there.
So, and I ask because, I don't think everyone understands this, so I'll give you a little bit of background. The National Guard is the combat reserve for the Army and the Air Force. We provide enduring rotational forces, to the joint force. We have been in every war. We have people in every combatant command. We are 430,000 strong. We are 20% of the joint force and only 4% of the DoD budget, which is probably why we couldn't afford to send people here, but sorry. Little secret. But from the medical standpoint, first, one of the uniquenesses of the Guard is, our primary mission is to fight and win these nation's wars. But in addition to that, we have the uniqueness of also defending the homeland as well as assisting our communities. For example, I'm from the New Jersey Guard. Our 44th Infantry Brigade Combat Team recently returned from OIR, Iraq and Syria, 1,500 soldiers. And at the same time, during that year, we have states that are assisting in fighting wildfires and floods and hurricanes and such. So we have a very unique mission, which we're very proud of, but it also creates some challenges for us. Reverend Miller understands from the reserve side that we have the challenges of, being part-time, weekend a month, 15 days a year, trying to get all of our training in. But on the flip side of that, when we talk about readiness, a lot of our medical folks, they're the same as she already mentioned, that we have people who are medics or paramedics on the outside, but again, maybe teachers or firefighters or what have you. Our providers, yes, they're all physicians or nurse practitioners or PAs, and they practice that every day. Some of the challenges that we do see with that is that many of ours are primary care, but when we're talking about LISCO, trying to make sure that they're prepared for that prolonged trauma care at the front line, not having that experience on a day-to-day basis. So making sure that we get them the trauma training that they need, or at least the exposure. And so, but as far as readiness in general, our med groups on the air side, our medical detachments on the Army side, they provide all the readiness for the medical readiness for the force. Again, the challenge is having the limited days to do that. We do supplement with the DHA's Reserve Health Readiness Program, so we're grateful for that. Although as we know that there are some challenges that we're working on. And then making sure that our medical folks are ready. Again, trying to get them into training programs. We use the partnerships. So when we talk about partnerships with my colleagues here, and then we also partner, we have the state partnership program. I'm not sure if you're familiar, the National Guard has a state partnership program. We have 116 partnerships. This is a program that's been in existence for over 30 years. The primary mission is for security cooperation, but the medical component of it is very key. So we do a lot of global health engagement. So we have actually affiliations where we do joint trauma training with our partners. I'd like to increase that more, but the budget. And getting our providers into training programs. The challenge for us is sometimes getting seats into the formal courses, and then the challenges of our providers when we want to go into civilian trauma hospitals. We do have some affiliations that are run through my office, and some of my lead folks are here today. But some of the challenges that we face are malpractice coverage for the providers. Medics, not so much a problem, but getting our providers into those programs to get that exposure is, malpractice coverage, license reciprocity, living in one state and being able to go to a hospital in another, and then our trauma funds that we use to send people to these places it's not a formal program, so we have, we depend on a congressional ad, so that's very dependent. So for example, this year, we have still yet to be able to execute any of those funds. So, and I'll finish there, but I'll pass it over to my colleague.
Well, good morning. I really appreciate listening to these incredibly accomplished leaders who are focused, as you can see, very diligently and leaning in very heavily into making sure that medics are ready to go, that they're prepared, that they're equipped, that they're put together in the right packages that are going to be able to accomplish the mission. They're fighting every single day for the budget that's needed. They're fighting every day to make sure that the things that you all need are in place. And I work very closely with every one of them, and I can tell you that they are all in, and they're fighting for you every single day. The thing I would highlight, though, as we listen to the panel and we hear how well Army, Navy, Air Force, the Guard, the Marine Corps, the Marine Reserve, Navy Reserve are working to make sure that medics are ready to go and have what they need and they're ready to go. It's helpful to think about roles and responsibilities, and whether a medic is an organic medic in a unit, whether that medic is working in an MTF on a regular basis, either aligned to a force package that could be on the hook to deploy, or perhaps in a position where they may be receiving casualties back to CONUS, or that medic is a civilian in an MTF, or even an overseas location, that may be needing to, and someday receive large numbers of casualties back in and provide a backstop to those that are going forward. Every one of those medics, every one of us, need to be ready to go, and we know that. The thing that I appreciate about medics, one of the things, there's a lot, but one of the things I really appreciate about us as a group and us as a community is that from a medical perspective, most of us live in an environment, a clinical environment, where we don't know what's going to come in from day to day. I mean, you wake up in the morning, you go to work, and you kind of have an idea what your schedule may look like, but depending on where you work, if you're in the ER, if you're a trauma team, you don't know what's coming that day. And so you've got to be ready for whatever walks in the door. And in a similar way, all of us need to be ready for whatever comes. I think it's worth thinking through sort of the environment that we're in. Talked to the new chairman last week. He highlighted this and the need to understand our environment. Our sort of our threat environment, if you will. We've got those in the world that would like to change our way of life, would like to see the values and the principles that we feel are important be set aside for a different set of values and principles. And what's interesting is watching those actors begin to develop relationships with one another that changes the threat profile. Having the opportunity to sit and watch on a daily basis the operations that are going on around the globe, we have forces, we all know that, we have forces postured around the globe every single day to try to make sure that those that would do us harm or those that would want to take away our way of life wake up in the morning and say, you know what, today is just not the day. And that's what it's all about. And so at the end of the day, our being ready is about making sure that we're ready to do what? We're ready to support those that are forward or in any location and postured in a position and in a state of readiness to communicate to those that would do us harm that today is not the day. What's interesting is you think about that, you think about how that all comes together. The environment, there's that threat environment. There's our own environment where we have particular friction points in our own environment. So it's helpful that we understand as leaders for sure where our policy friction points are, where our financial friction points are, perhaps where friction points are across the government and how we work those through. And that's what we worry about on a regular basis is how to work inside that environment in a way that we can be effective moving forward. The word readiness is an interesting word. I think it means a lot of things to a lot of different people. I'll tell you that to a unit commander, their readiness means meeting particular readiness objectives that need to be met and reporting out on readiness of a unit. At a higher level, for the chairman's level, readiness means that when he needs to make a recommendation to the Secretary of Defense to move a force forward, that when that order is written and the Secretary of Defense orders that force to move, that force is ready to move. And they are supported by all the sustainment functions that need to support them. The logistics functions, personnel functions, medical functions, chaplain services, and so on and so forth. That sustainment list is not short. And we are part of that sustainment piece for those forces going forward. I think so we understand the environment we're in and understand how to work that. There have been a lot of changes in roles and responsibilities over the last 10 to 15 years, and so that has created a little bit of turbulence in our environment. But I think that's beginning to settle out as we understand roles and responsibilities, and some of those have changed significantly. Whereas the Army, Navy, Air Force were worried about running MTFs, they're kind of out of the MTF business now, except, wait a minute, those active duty personnel that are in those MTFs are managed and administratively managed by the services, and now Defense Health Agency runs those MTFs. That is not a small change, that's a tectonic change. That's a significant change, and it requires what we've already seen, which is working through the friction of adjusting roles and responsibilities. And I think with this leadership team that you see on the stage, we're working through that, I think, very effectively. And with Dr. Farrar and Mr. Hurst leading, that's also helping to work through those friction points as well and better understanding our relationships with one another, including on a transactional basis. I would highlight, secondly, besides the environmentals, I would highlight the need for integration. Dr. Farrar talked yesterday about integrating, innovating, and being ready. And from an integration perspective, the thing I would share with you is that while we are working very diligently, and all these leaders on the stage are working very diligently to make sure that all the medics that are within their responsibility are ready to go, and you see all the different ways they're thinking through that, at the end of the day, when those medics are called up and asked to do something for a combatant commander, they're being asked to do something for a combatant commander. And that combatant commander operates through they've got service components, and there's a joint task force commander often that's assigned over an area of responsibility or an area of action. And medics, when we're deployed, and I hate to say the word deployed because sometimes we do this when we're not physically in a different location, particularly if you're in the NORTHCOM AOR, for example. Sometimes we move to a different location. But operating in the joint environment is a very different sort of experience than operating in our service environments. And part of the challenge we have is that we don't have a lot of opportunities in our careers to really get a sense of and understand that. And so the integration piece is important. I'll share with you that if you were to talk to our chairman today and you were to ask him, hey, what do you do different than what the service chiefs do? His answer would be, I am responsible for global integration. I'm responsible for taking the forces that are out there, including the sustainment portions, including medical, and figuring out how to spread those across the globe in a way that we can accomplish the things that need to be accomplished. And integrating the forces that we have available and the resources that we have available to yield a strategic effect. And of course, we are among those forces. So the ability for us to interoperate, the ability for us to work well together, i.e. integrate, is absolutely critical to the success of the joint force. And I think that Admiral Miller said it very, very well when she talked about the need for us to come together and work well together. That is absolutely critical. So integration, interesting concept. So how do we do that? I would ask you to look around yourself every single day. The thing that I tell medics that are in the MCF and medics that are at the deck plate, if you want to think about integration, the first step is to actually, in your day-to-day work, look at the step to your left and the step to your right. For example, hey, if I'm a primary care physician, how do patients get to me? You should know that. What do they go through to get to your office where you can actually see them? And when they leave you, where do they actually, what happens with them? How do they get the medications that I've prescribed? How do they get a consult that I've suggested that they do? And as you understand those processes and you ask yourself, well, how could I reach into that process a little bit on either side and facilitate the connection across so that that experience is a little bit better for the patients? And then at a higher level, a different echelon, how do I, as an Army medic, reach across with my Air Force medic or my Navy counterparts or my Guard and Reserve counterparts? What do they bring? What do I bring? How do we work better together? We have training opportunities, we have exercise opportunities, and we have operational opportunities to ask those questions when we're working together. And many of you have had the experience of being deployed or being in an environment or being even in an educational environment where you're with members of other services, people that are wearing different uniforms. Oh, guess what? That's today, right? Here we are. And so engaging one another and understanding how we can best work together is really, really critical. So understanding the environment, understanding what it means to be globally integrated, what global integration means and what integration means to the chairman, who is the one that will make recommendations to the Secretary of Defense about whether or not to move the medics or employ the medics or deploy the medics that are being well prepared by all these leaders on the stage is really critical. And the last comment I would make has to do with change. So we talk a lot about change. We've been through a lot of change. I'm here to tell you we'll continue to be through a lot of change. You know, in my 30 plus years in the Air Force, I don't think that I have ever experienced a time of significant non-change or no change or whatever. You know, we're always in a state of change. And the good news is that's just called life. That's just normal. And we can look around and say, yeah, but this time's a little bit different. Yeah, but this is more significant. Yeah, but maybe. But what really matters is how we manage the change that happens in both our lives and in our professional lives every single day. I'm here to share with you that if we're not undergoing change, we're not growing, we're not learning, we're not adapting, we're not becoming better. And that change is really important. The other thing I would offer to you, and we talk about this on the Joint Staff, is you know, how do you lead through change? How do you manage change? And how do you respond to that? There was an interesting question yesterday about, hey, is there any consideration to going back to putting the MTFs back in the services? Going back is not an option. And as we think about the things that are happening that might make us uncomfortable, change-wise, we have a couple of choices. We can act out, or we can lean in and into the change. And so I would invite us to always be looking forward, always be thinking about next year, next 2 years, next 5 years, next 10 years. Where do you want to be professionally and personally? And where do you think that the service needs to be in that particular time? And then from my perspective, where does the joint force need to be ready to respond what we might face in 2030, 2035, 2040? We have work ongoing right now that is looking at that and developing insights that we can then share with the service leaders as they develop their plans moving forward. And we have a number of efforts that are getting after the things that I've talked about, how we integrate more effectively, understanding the environment that we're in, gaining insights so we're better prepared for the future environment. And so again, coming back to the idea of understanding our environment, understanding that we can wake up one morning and go to bed that night having had experiences that we didn't expect. We don't know when we might be asked to do something. Many of you have been called. My wife's a Red Cross volunteer. She gets calls. I need you on an airplane in 12 hours to go to this place. I mean, I don't even get those kind of calls. And so, we're not the only ones. But we're all in an environment where we could be asked to do something different than what we planned to do when we woke up in the morning. So environmentals, integration, absolutely key. How well we work together. It's interesting, many of you will have events in your lives that you will be sent by, say, the Army, Navy, or Air Force to go do some event in, say, the Indo-Pacific, and you'll think, hey, the Army sent me here. Well, true, but the Army was asked to send you there because a combatant commander needed you there. So it all comes back when you're in those areas to a joint request that makes that work. So understanding how that fits together is key. The ability to integrate into that is critical. And then how do we choose to manage the change that we face every single day? And if we wake up one morning and there's not change management that needs to be done, we need to worry. It means we're stagnant and we're not moving forward. And I'll stop there and be prepared for questions.
All right, well, thank you very much, each one of the Surgeon Generals. Let's give them a round of applause. And now if we can bring the house lights up, I think we should spend most of our time hearing from the audience, the brave ones that'll come to the microphones, or I also have an iPad that is buzzing with lots of questions. So we'll try to entertain all the questions, and we'll start with you, sir.
Good morning. My name is Joe Grace. I was the CIO for Navy Medicine, retired captain. And what's relevant in this discussion is I was talking to Dr. Smith a few minutes ago, and we sat there at BUMED a couple of years ago. Now it's been a lot of years ago. And we discussed the leadership above us. We talked about who was making those decisions. We talked about, boy, if I was in charge, here's what I'd do. If I had the ability and that magic wand, here's what I'd make different. So as each of you are up there wearing the roles of your service, leading these great men and women, defending our nation and taking the battle to the enemy, now that you're in that seat, what would you do now that you have it, that you thought about when you were sitting there as an 05, 06, 04? And Dr. Smith, I'd like to start with you. As we sat there as captains, you had a lot of ideas. I'd be curious as to if they've come true and if you're following through on those.
Well, thank you, Joe. And I appreciate the question, and I'll look forward to everybody's response. I think the clear mission going forward, and the Secretary has made this clear, and I think we all know, is to make sure that we have a force that is medically ready and clearly a medical force that's ready, and all the efforts that we're trying to do at the DHA, and I think collectively as a leadership team, is oriented towards that mission set. I do believe that we need to try to invest, as has been mentioned, it was mentioned yesterday and also by a number of our speakers, in our readiness generation and sustainment platforms. That's where the money clearly is. And we can't, we have to do it very carefully to make sure that we maintain, as Admiral Vi had mentioned in Jacksonville, the fact that we have to make sure that our aviators can be where they need to be for their missions, the submariners, and making sure that we have the skill sets at the various locations. But the reality is that we need to, because of the really the readiness demand and the ability for us to position ourselves for the future and be sustainable, we need to spend a fair amount of time, as this group has been doing over the last number of months, to figure out what that looks like and move forward with that. Clearly, there's going to be a fair amount of emotion whenever this occurs, but it is clearly, from my perspective and looking at the future, what we need to do to make sure that we continue to be ready for whatever the fight is. But I'll pass it down to General Izagari, and then just down the row. Great question, thanks.
It is a great question, and actually often when we do town halls, I'll ask the folks in the audience, hey, what would be your number one priority if you were Surgeon General, or what would be the thing you would stop doing if you were Surgeon General? Because it gives a great perspective. But looking at where we are today, and I recently had a chance to speak with some retired 4-stars as far as what do they need, what did they need for military medicine, and what do they see the need? And they gave me an example of a battle that had been particularly brutal, but where the medical care was particularly impactful. And they said, start at looking at this success story of where military medicine brought value to the mission, and plan backwards and understand how we got to this place. And so we talked through that a little bit. And what it was is there were medics who were integrated into that formation, much as General DeGauze described, that knew the mission, that were part of it. They trained, just like our speaker said yesterday. Why did they know to get him off the mountain? Because they had trained to do it again and again. They were integrated, as was mentioned by the Joint Staff Surgeon, into that unit to accomplish that mission. Where there were spaces that we didn't have that capability organic, we go outside. So the partnerships that the Army has, starting all the way at the installation level, partnering with universities so that our medics get live tissue training, and we do that at Fort Campbell. And those partnerships are across, whether you're working in the MTF or you're working in the unit. We are integrating that best quality care and best quality training in an operational context to ensure that when the need comes, that medic, nurse, doc, you name the whole range, is ready to respond to strengthen the hand of the commanding general to succeed in the mission. Partnerships go beyond local, though. They're also at an organizational level and across our compos. So our trauma partnerships, for example, Camden, New Jersey, the person who leads that, civilian by day, reservist on the weekends, and does a phenomenal job, so brings that all together. Take it up one more level, and you go to international partnerships. So Landstuhl Regional Medical Center just signed an agreement to become designated as a level 2 trauma center in the German system. And that came about because of partnerships with the German Army. So all of those items, I think the big thing is to have a litmus test to say, what do each of our actions build to? And starting at that point of greatest need and where we've been successful, because history doesn't necessarily repeat itself, but it does echo a lot. And so how do we learn from what we've done to be successful in the past, learning from our partners in Ukraine right now most currently, and then be relentless in continuous transformation to get to that level of greatest efficacy?
So what can I add to this? I think my entire career, it's been healthcare delivery or readiness. And I think the result of NDA 17, which split the quadruple aim from each of our services to having the DHA take healthcare delivery, the experience, paying for it, and then the services have readiness, maybe one of the unintended outcomes of that is that we got a little siloed. Because I would suggest to you that healthcare delivery and readiness are inextricably linked. And what I say to our Air Force medics all the time is, ready for what? We're not driving or fixing the ships, tanks, or planes. We are keeping the people healthy that do those things, and we're patching them up and taking care of their families. So we need to be on top of our game for healthcare delivery and supporting healthcare delivery. And I think that best occurs, and we provide the best value to our service chiefs, the chairman, and the taxpayers by getting ready in the agency's MTFs. And so I think that's a challenge going forward. I love the military health system, but we are in a challenging environment in our nation financially that trickles down to the military health system, and we've got to blend effectiveness at the point of injury and in supporting each of our services in the joint force with some efficiency at the agency's 450 MTFs. Otherwise, we're going to channel more money away from the warfighter and to a less efficient defense health program. So, what I wish earlier that I'd realized the importance of both healthcare delivery and readiness together, and that they are not mutually exclusive.
Yeah, hey, Joe, I'm going to take your question in a little bit a different direction. And what I'll say is specifically for the Sea Service, what was one of the things that I recognized kind of as I came into the role as the Deputy Surgeon General, and then what have I tried to work on, and I think we've had great influence on when it comes to how can we ensure, again, we have ready sailors and Marines in particular, out there and on the job. And what I would say, and the Joint Staff has actually done a great job with this, started under General Friedrichs, now with General Andrews, but I will tell you, in my opinion, that 4 years ago, Navy medicine was not integral nor integrated within the Department of the Navy. We didn't follow all the same processes and procedures. We had a DHP fund that kind of met our needs. We used that to meet readiness requirements. We didn't participate in POM the same way. We didn't participate in, the whole PPB&E process, acquisitions. We didn't have a SysCom. We really didn't have TICOMs at the time. And so that was my big initiative, is how do we, literally, as I transitioned BUMED and Navy medicine, a lot of people were concerned, like, hey, where are you going? What are you trying to do? And it was very simple. If you came to me with an idea and something that needed changed, my question was very simple. How's the fleet do it? And is there any reason we're not doing it the exact same way? And one of the most recent elements that we have is and this was kind of brought about by the acting VCNO when I first sat down with him, the acting CNO, he kind of pushed his chair back a little bit and he said, Doc, because I really don't understand your guys' world. He goes, that's partially my fault, but I just don't understand it. Similar follow-up about 2 years ago with Admiral Cottle down at Fleet Forces. I was talking to him and he said, Doc, I know you're doing a lot of things. He goes, but they all seem to be over here. And I go out and I talk to sailors, and healthcare systems are still a problem for everyone. It's their number one complaint. I feel like I hold all the risk, but everything's done over here. So one of the things we stood up, again, just like there is a enterprise for aviation under the Air Boss, there's an enterprise for surface warfare under the SWO Boss, for expeditionary care. We actually now have an enterprise signed out by the CNO, and again, we've talked to the Marine Corps, and we're going to be merging with them into a naval enterprise after about the first year. But our enterprise is to try and bring those two things together. How, before we end up at an MHS, do I have fleet commanders, or before at a MISR, how do I have fleet commanders being able to weigh in on a problem sets? And if you look at our lines of effort, there's 5 lines of effort. If you look at the Surgeon General's lines of effort at BUMED, there's 4 that line up exactly, and then force design is added to that. It really is taking these issues and efforts that are impacting the fleet every day. As a matter of fact, when I spoke to Admiral Cottle, we gave him 35 root causes as to why his sailors were perceiving that they were not getting the health care they deserved. And then we showed him that I actually owned total ownership of 5 of them. And so how do you start to link the fleet, the line, as we mature the Marine Corps leadership into these governance processes that really do run up a separate channel, and bring those two together as early as possible to start addressing issues to make sure that we have it from the warfighter's perspective. And an example I will give you, in the lines of effort, I actually have line flags who are the LOE charges for each one, so outside of Navy medicine, and I've now got LOE 1 lead, which is an admiral from PAC Fleet, who is understanding and articulating to everybody, hey, if we don't recruit and retain Navy medical providers with LOE 4, I can't execute LOE 1. So by bringing that integration with the fleet, I feel like for the first time, just like they understand ordnance, just like they understand logistics, just like they understand maintenance, I feel like they are finally starting to understand health services.
I can't add to that from a Navy medicine standpoint, except to say that we are excited to blend the Marine Corps into the Navy enterprise and make it a naval enterprise. We are far better when our senior leaders are aligned and shooting at the same targets for prioritization and executing everything that we need to support health services. So I'm going to take this conversation a little bit different direction because there's been so much already presented by everybody to my right. And I will tell you this, that this system has been through tumultuous change for the past several years, but we are headed in a direction that is fraught with opportunity. And everybody sitting out there is going to enjoy this period of time to be able to execute and capitalize on this period of opportunity. I'm 1 foot in the pasture, so I'm going to be watching it from a beach somewhere, drinking a Mai Tai, watching this all evolve. But I envy you in many regards, because after all the hard work that's been done in the last 10 years, we are on a trajectory that is going to be amazing, but it is going to take a tremendous amount of hard work to get there. And I just want to tag on one thing that SG has said. I think everybody knows that we have been through a tremendous recruitment and retention headwinds. I can speak for the Navy medicine piece of that. RC, we're doing a little bit better, but here's this, and I'm bringing the Marine Corps lens on this. Health services in a very special place with the Marine Corps, and you have to have kind of served in this, and you have to have been there, boots on the ground with the Marines to understand what I'm saying. But they love Navy medicine, and we prioritize well on the Commandant's priority list. Almost every year we hit in the top 5 or 6 priorities because they totally get it because of where the Marines are in every fight, and they get it. The importance of that is that Marines, soldiers, sailors, airmen, guardsmen, they go do what they do on the pointy end of the spear, run to the sound of gunfire, without hesitation, because they have full confidence that military medicine is going to be there to take care of them when something bad happens. They do what they do partially because they feel a safety net under them. You heard it from our guests yesterday. You heard that. They are inspired to run and do what they do because they are fully confident that we are going to bring our A game every single day to our fight, to our war zone, inside of where we do our work. And I will tell you from a recruitment retention lens, one thing that has always been tied to recruitment and keeping people in the rank and file is healthcare, is the healthcare benefit that they enjoy, the trust they have in uniformed members. So the harder everybody can work on all the lines of effort that we sit around hours and hours and hours around tables together and have for years now, trying to keep moving forward in this enterprise, but it's about trust. It's about the trust that the warfighters have in what we do every single day. And where do we build that trust? We build that trust in garrison. We build that trust side by side when we train with them in the operational environment, and we build that trust when they come see us in the garrison setting for their health care. And guess what? We build that trust when we're taking care of their families and their dependents in our MTFs. That's the whole trust factor is built in garrison, and then we take that into a wartime setting. So the work that's being done, everything we're doing to get after access to care, it's been a challenge. Nobody up here is going to deny that. It has been challenging, but everybody's rolled up their sleeves and getting after the access, including all of you out there, getting out of the box, looking for innovative ways to open the aperture, get people a space when they need it. We all get the phone calls, somebody's having a struggle, you jump in and you try to figure out how to help make it right, because everybody wants to do the right thing and be great. And everybody is great. And when that person gets to the nurse, the medics, the doctors, they get great care. So I would just tell you that the work that you're doing every single day out there to keep moving through the challenging times that we're all in and moving to that better space matters. Every single patient engagement matters because you're imprinting people and you are building that trust. And I will dare to say, in some regards, rebuilding the trust in our system and what we deliver every single day out there. And you are all a significant piece of that. Every single conversation, every single stopping in the hallway matters. I personally intentionally secret shop when I accompany my husband to his medical appointments and go all over. And I've been, in many MTFs because he's a bit of a medical malady. So we ends up, and so I go in and very plain clothes. And I go in and sleuth around until they figure it out because I just want to experience it as if anybody else was walking in there to get care. So that I can kind of see what people are experiencing out there. And that's important. But I just want to tell you that we're on a great trajectory. And I think that one of the most important things that we do every day out there as we're continuing to wade through challenges, we have holes in our formation, we have recruitment challenges, we're working out of retention challenges. It's very exciting to see what's going on, is everybody sitting in here is a part of that. We have to have a culture that we can recruit to and we can retain to. Quality of service matters, meaning the experience your nurses and medics and doctors and everybody has in their work life matters. And you wouldn't be sitting in this conference if you didn't have a role to play in that. So all I ask you to do is, my 2 cents worth on this is I'm 1 foot out the door, is, inscribe yourself into this legacy, inscribe yourself into this trajectory and this journey that we're on, because every single engagement matters every day that you're part of. So just look at it as an opportunity. Change is exciting. Change brings opportunity. We're charting a future state that's unknown territory right now, but that is exciting and that is opportunity. So I ask you to see it through that lens. That's the lens I see it through, and I know how our Marines think. They love military medicine. They'll tell you a bunch of stories when they wake up and they see a soldier, an airman, anybody in a uniform, they're like, oh, thank God. When they see a uniform standing over them, they have immense relief and ultimate trust and confidence that it's going to be okay. So that is a privilege that we all share. That is a privilege. And so everything you can do to keep charting that future and engender that trust in Garrison matters. Thank you.
Okay. So I'm going to make mine real simple and say, if I were queen for the day, I just want people, time, and money. No.
That's easy.
No, I do mean that. But in all seriousness, when we talk about the readiness, medical readiness of our force, at being the time, we need the time to ensure that we're having the opportunity to get them medically ready. PHAs, we have units that we send 400 or 500 people through a day, and we wonder what kind of quality we're getting out of that. What are we really getting? Are we really making sure that they're medically ready? And then, making sure that on the flip side, if they have issues, are they getting access to the care that they need to be able to fix the problems that they have so that they're medically ready? And I hate to admit it, but we have guardsmen who are uninsured. Yes, they have access to be on, TRS or perhaps other insurances, but for whatever reason, they're not. So that's a challenge for us. So finding a way to make sure that they have proper access to care, however that's done. And then on the other side, making sure that our providers are ready, making sure that the same thing, time, money, and people, is making sure that they can get into training programs. The challenges when we talk about trauma is making sure that we can fix these obstacles that we have of getting them into civilian trauma hospitals to get ready. That's a big focus for us now. And then being able to rely on the funding. So that's
Thank you. John?
So there are 4 things I would do and 4 things that we're trying to do now. But before I mention these 4 things that I think I would recommend we do or that I'd like to do, I want to mention first the thing I would not change. And the number one thing I would not change is you. I would not change the medics that we have in this system. I would not change the people we have in this system. The people I've had a chance to interact with and work with through my career, and I think everybody on stage would say the same, are the primary reason why I've stayed as long as I have. We have medics who know how to get things done. We have medics who know how to figure it out. What we owe those medics and what we owe you is a system with which to do that you don't have to fight so hard every day to get the right thing done. So with that in mind, there are 4 things I would do. Thing number 1, because the MTFs and military medicine is no longer managed inside service lanes, I would open up and create opportunities for more medics to become joint qualified and create more joint billets so that more medics can understand a joint perspective and understand what it means to go to war and to interact and integrate the way we've talked about. So joint qualification, pathways to joint qualification, and opportunities for joint experiences that are not just working with one another, but involve using joint processes are number 1. Number 2, along those lines, I would, what Admiral Bai talked about is so critical as far as the governance and integrating governance. So I would integrate government, siloed governance, so that we integrate, as General DeGauze talked about, the governance that's associated with the healthcare delivery piece and the governance associated with the operational medicine side. Those need to be intertwined so that we can work those issues as one, if you will, and see them as connected. And I think at the governance level, that's important. So integrated governance is number 2. Number 3, I would normalize our processes to the rest of the department. And many talked about that here. Admiral Bai in particular hit up on that. As he talked about inside the Navy, how he's doing that in the Navy and making medicine more relevant to his Navy line commanders, we now need to make sure that we're doing the same thing with primarily DHA processes and DoD processes, and using established processes rather than utilizing our own. The way we're financed drives a little bit of that, so Dr. Farrar's already talked about how we need to get after the financing piece, and those things go hand in hand. And then 4th, I would recognize that we have a system that is really strong in that we have a federated system that all of us have to work together to make this system work. It's interesting, I represent the U.S. in NATO, U.S. medicine at NATO, and I go around the table and the German Surgeon General can tell me I'm the Surgeon General for the German Armed Forces, or they're all, when they come to the table, they are the Surgeon General for their armed forces. We don't have that system, and I'm not recommending that, because what we have up here is a lot stronger than that. But nevertheless, you ask yourself the question, sort of who's in charge, right? That's a worthwhile question. I think Dr. Farrar has a good answer for that. But what I would offer is that being in charge is one thing, being able to lead is one thing, but the management piece is really critical. And so I would look for areas where we can implement enterprise management to the things that we individually do very well, but they have to come together and be coordinated to be interoperable and more integrated. So enterprise management that aligns authorities, responsibilities, and resources. So number 1, more joint opportunity. Number 2, integrated governance. Number 3, normalize our processes to the rest of the department so they understand who we are, what we're doing, and why we're doing it. And number 4, look for opportunities to implement enterprise management that aligns authorities, responsibilities, and resources a little bit better than we have them aligned now.
Thank you. I've been waiting very patiently.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Hopefully your workout was good this morning. Appreciate the opportunity to speak to the Surgeons Generals and Dr. Smith. Thank you so much. We've heard that medical is a local delivery, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to be the commander of Naval Health Clinics in Hawaii in support of Marines and sailors at the waterfront and up in K Bay within the priority area of responsibility of Indo-PACOM, where DMO will certainly occur. I'm not adverse to having the difficult and uncomfortable conversations with my line partners to draw the line in the sand of what my facilities are funded and required to deliver. Actually, we have a Thursday morning monthly meeting, Angry Birds Club, where we talk about our lines of effort. So I speak to them frequently. However, when and where the rubber meets the road, such as offloading regulated medical waste from the ships, delivering pre-deployment vaccines to the Marines getting ready to deploy, and lab support for operational units. May you share where your line in the sand is between DHP and O&M funding? It's much like going to a dinner and then having to split the bill with your friends, and sometimes that creates the uncomfortable discussions at that point in time. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you for the question. I probably should take that one. And what I'll say is, and I had said this to a group yesterday, this won't be a very satisfying answer at this moment, but we have a group, Daryl Landro, who's the comptroller, if you will, for the Defense Health Program and Health Affairs, is working with each of the components and the joint staff to work through hard work that we have not done, quite frankly, since 2017 clearly, which is to delineate whose responsibility is, and you mentioned vaccines as an example. We have traditionally been doing that out of the DHP, and for going forward, that has always been in our bucket, but they're looking at that because now there are contingency purposes that people are asking for, and there's a limited amount of money relative to that. So we are hopefully within the next month going to have a clear delineation. It doesn't mean that there's going to be more money to spread at that point in time, but it will at least make it clear who needs to be asking for what dollars, because it became confusing over the last 8 years, because some money has been transferred out of the DHP to the services for readiness purposes, but not all of the money was transferred. And we know that providing that ready force and the medically ready force has a huge readiness component to it. So trying to parse that out is quite difficult, but hopefully that will provide us more guidance so we can provide you at the deck plate or in the field clear guidance, and you don't need to worry about where those funds are coming from. So hopefully that answers your question.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much. But I just wanted to follow up with the Surgeon Generals on what their thoughts are with regards to what comes out of that. Because having come from Great Lakes, I was EXO there, where the accessions come in. I'm worried that some of the line will continue to move, and that DHP will no longer, cover accession labs, blood draws. And it's kind of like this slippery slope that we're in. And I welcome change and the opportunity to lead during that change, but I'm wondering if there's a list of what we can reference, that what we are here to support and provide, so that we can clearly identify that.
That's our intent, and frankly, I'm sure that from an accessions point of view, we'll continue to do what we've been doing. We've been funded to do that, and but more guidance will be coming. So thanks for the question.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much.
So let me ask some of the questions that have been rolling in on the internet. Our military health providers are undermanned and burned out. Many leave military service due to this burnout. What is your vision to ensure recruiting and retention of these critical specialties, particularly mental health?
Yeah, so I think I can start that one because it's something we certainly talk about frequently. And we do have levers as far as bonuses, as far as lengthening the amount of time people can stay on station so that they aren't forced to choose as frequently between needs of the, in my case, Army and needs of their families. But I really believe the number one way we can improve retention of our clinicians, and therefore they become recruiters versus anti-recruiters, is by having a healthcare system that they can practice at the top of their game. I think Dr. Ferrara said yesterday, high patient volumes is a thriving MHS. And I could not agree more fully. A corollary would be a busy MTF is a ready MTF. So that gets us at all of our goals. So really, this focus and the investment that this collective group has on strengthening our direct care system and that our leadership has in being that strong voice for the criticality of direct care system so that we can get to that point, and then leveraging technologies, ambient dictation and other things that help decrease the administrative burden and improve that connection and engagement of the clinicians with those they care for, whether it's in their units or in the MTFs or in the ORs. I mean, that's the thing, is it's that full spectrum. And then I know, again, that there's also a strong effort to speak about the true cost of what we do so that we can hire additional civilians in order to help stabilize our system so that we have those partners across the total force to be able to keep the ship running, so to speak, as we have frequent training and deployments and that integration into units as we discussed.
Yeah. So I think General Izagari hit most of it. I mean, there's a book by Daniel Pink called Drive, and what motivates people today, and autonomy, mastery, and purpose. And so to be able to have mastery, you need to have a well-staffed administrative support MTF. And so we are struggling with that right now. I mean, we're struggling before some of the efficiency efforts that the new administration is putting on that are affecting kind of, in particular, our civilian hiring. So certainly, I think from the MHS governance, we are laser focused on addressing that. And I feel confident with the new team under Dr. Ferrara that we have got a plan to robust the main clinical platforms and perhaps have to take some risk in some of the other places that maybe we struggle to get full practice, full scope of practice in an MTF. With mental health in particular, I think I'd like to thank our previous Secretary of the Air Force, Frank Kendall, for recognizing that we were the one service who still double tapped our mental health providers in family advocacy. And so he's funded our family advocacy with money for civilians so that we can bring back mental health providers into our MTFs. And essentially it's 18,000 additional follow-up appointments or 12,000 new patient appointments. So I think improving the practice environment and doing the things that General Izagari said will improve, will reduce burnout a bit, but it's a huge challenge. Aaron.
Nothing else.
So another one that came in is to the Surgeon Generals to build efficiencies, reduce training requirements. Do you foresee any consolidation of desperate medical readiness forms, processes, procedures, and websites to foster true joint medical readiness, a so-called MedPros for all? Darren, do you want to start?
After that, Darren.
Where's John DeGus? Yeah, for those that don't know, I am a proponent and a champion and have been seeding in our limited constrained resource environment. Would love to see some additional resources potentially, but sometimes it's easiest to come up with a solution when you have the worst processes in place. And so unlike the Army that had MedPros, unlike you all with your system, right now, if the Secretary of the Navy or if the CNO or even the Commandant said, hey, how many sailors are on light duty? So for us, all the names are different with your profiles, but for us it's basically light duty and then limited duty, and then obviously if you're exiting limited duty is to return to duty, and then you'd go through the IDES process if you're getting out. I'd be like, sir, I don't know, let me go write an algorithm that can do a word search within MHS Genesis to find how many times the docs have written light duty times 30 days. Don't forget in 2017, then the Secretary of Defense said that all medical encounters will have an evaluation for deployability. We tried to do some things within the system, but other than, again, you all going into a separate system, there's no way to do that. So what we've done and demonstrated across the Navy, because again, for those that know me, and again, John, I love you, brother, but Many people will bring computer solutions to us and they'll have a PowerPoint slide deck and they'll say, look at what it can do. And you're like, great, so can I see it now? Well, we haven't built it, but this is what it could do. John was listening to what I was saying and looking not only at deployability, but employability. And again, for us, the Air Force struggled, and I think may still be struggling some with MHS Genesis with PRP identification. We have a little bit of a different process flow in the Navy, so it was not high risk for us. But again, a COTS system is not going to identify medical unique requirements for us to be able to provide you all real-time knowledge support data that helps you understand if I have an aviator in front of me, are they ready to go? And one of the things that really tipped me even more, I was up at Portsmouth, New Hampshire, and God bless her, but she was a civilian primary care doc who asked me, she said, I finally learned the Navy deployability and employability standards, what we need for diving duty, radiation health work. She goes, but I get a lot of Massachusetts guardsmen coming to me, mostly air. She goes, I have no idea what the Air Force requirements are. My response literally to her was, God bless you for learning all the Navy stuff, but we need to do this better. So what John's trying to help us do is basically build knowledge support tools utilizing AI that can take the information of what are in the standards, what are in the requirements, provide real-time data to the provider. I don't care what program you're on. So you're getting ready to put someone on a medication, you get flagged if that's going to trip the PRP program. You can actually take a PHA. The other question earlier that asked, what's the one thing you want to accomplish? As Surgeon General of the Navy, I have 2 years left unless they fire me. And within that time, I'd like to work with DHA and with HA, because every time I go out, I ask one question of the sailors: what should we stop doing? And y'all can give me that answer afterwards. I don't want to go through it now, but ironically, I rarely, if ever, get a response, which I'm not happy with. But the one time I get a response, it's stop the PHA. But my comment is, I don't know how as a military service, when readiness is priority one, you don't have some sort of a periodic health assessment. So my goal is to continue to work to make the periodic health assessment actually a value-added opportunity that is limited when it comes to filling out if you ate your 5 fruits and vegetables, but value-added in the fact that if you're an Air Force, aviator and you are on a certain class physical, me as a doc can actually look at that, bounce it off the standards, and tell me whether or not you are currently ready to fly based on those standards, and how can I help you, if not, to get you connected to the right resources. So that would be my answer. I think we have some tools that will make that a value-added opportunity that can work across the spectrum of care and really provide our providers with the opportunity to actually have a periodic health assessment that has value.
Anybody else on that? Okay, another question is, within your service, how is collaboration with allied nations and other institutions enhancing your services' military, medical, and readiness efforts?
Yeah, so I can start with that. So I think huge. Again, there's nothing about large-scale combat operations that we think of doing alone. And so when we talk about casualty reception, when we talk about what we're going to look like going forward as far as convalescent hospitals, the thought of how would we keep our folks who can recover and return to fight in the theater is very real. And while many of us have grown up in COIN and thought about delivering care out of tents, that's not the only way. And so working with allied nations, first, you have to have trust before you can talk about any of this interoperability. So you have to have trust to engage in collaboration, to then exercise together, and ultimately to be interoperable at that time. But that takes a lot of planning in the background. So whether it is across Europe or across the Indo-Pacific, I think all of us have engagement with our fellow service medical to talk about where are those opportunities, not only for care at that time, but how do we use the same language? There's a great exercise going down in Australia coming up with a combined joint task force that has just that, and that command laid out with our nation partners. So I think it really does take those relationships up front, and that's even talking about care alone. That doesn't even get into the health security cooperation place, which is another huge space where military medicine brings incredible value and strength to our ability to defend our nation.
We are in Indo-PACOM and in Europe working with multiple partners. I had the opportunity to meet with 3 or 4 surgeons general from the Indo-PACOM region at the AMSIS meeting. We do joint exercises, Bala Katan, Cope North, just getting toward a little more interoperability with some of our longer allies, the British, the Australians. We have interfly agreements, so you can put a CCAT patient on a C-17 that's British or Australian or ours, and we need more of that in the future, and so increased training, increased partnering, I think is going to be key.
Yeah, similarly, I would actually say in this, I'm the supporting commander, not the supported commander for most of these efforts. They're executed at the fleet level, at the MEF level, obviously often under the authorities of the combatant commanders. So we leverage, again, General Andros, and then we have representatives with NATO that work on all the agreements, the partnerships, utilization of blood products that are obviously growing and continue to grow. I know Captain Roberts is here somewhere. He's working that effort. But then where I would say we've kind of taken it the next step, and haven't done this with all nations, but most recently, our dear neighbors to the north, we have actually their Navy Surgeon General, which if you know their system is actually an Army guy, who was the medical director of a recent Pacific partnership. So he is integrated with us in our health security cooperation, global health engagement efforts, but we're actually working more closely now as they develop their force development of their next maritime expeditionary capabilities. We're bringing him into all of our meetings again. In the Navy, we use the term AMOL, but your MTO. People don't realize this. They always talk about interoperability, and I get frustrated a little bit because sometimes they like to pull NSNs, and people have heard me say this before, but as an anesthesiologist, hand me a 30 mil Luer lock syringe, I don't care if it's B&D or Aero, it's the same thing to me. And so we often get caught up on we're not interoperable, we're not interchangeable. I would argue, the minute I took Air Force equipment, put it on a Navy ship with an Army FST team, I'm pretty interoperable. And we did that in CENTCOM, 10 years ago. But where I think the real opportunity lies, every time we do an AMOL review, I actually get a report out from the ESH-3, from their ESH-4 that looks at what of these mostly equipment pieces are in the Army, in the Navy, in the Air Force, and in the Marine Corps. So I get that view. But where we've actually started to go now with the Canadians is bringing them into the discussions to see where we can partner and actually look at having like capabilities. And my answer is this: you never want to be at equipment where you have only one equipment provider, or you're obviously limited by their production and their response rates. But everybody thinks it's about the connections, and I'll perhaps upset my Transcom folks in the room, but again, as an anesthesiologist, I can take monitors off patients and put new ones on. It's not that challenging. But to me, where the real criticality of needing it limited is for our biomed techs, PMS, supplies, and knowing that you're going to be limited in theater, being able to get things in and things out. If something breaks, how can I make sure that I have the spare parts for that and not the 500 other ventilators that someone thought was a good idea to have? So I think that's another big piece that is new that we had previously not been working with our international partners, is how can we start making our platforms more like?
Yeah, I would highlight the importance of the work of the services with our international partners, but it's worth noting that the way the question was phrased was, I think it was, in your services or service interaction internationally. And what that belies is the lack of joint understanding in the group writ large, which is why my number one thing was to get more of a joint experience. The interaction with our international partners is a joint matter. There's a reason why the chairman is the primary interface from the Department of Defense with our partner chiefs of defense. And while all the great work is done by the services as the operational arm, if you will, they're done, as Admiral Weiss stated very eloquently, usually under the direction of a combatant commander, which is coordinated through the chairman. So it's worth noting that international engagement is a joint matter. The services have critical engagements that we do not want to slow down on at all, but all of those are relevant in that they eventually support our ability to support the combatant commander under the direction of the SecDef as recommended by the chairman formulating a lot of his recommendations based on interaction with our partner CHODS. There's a reason why NATO, the 5I program, framework program, AUKUS, ANSYS, all these other things fall inside and under the responsibility of the chairman. And so it's just everything that's being done is wonderful and great, but it's worth understanding and noting how that nests in the broader picture as a joint matter.
And I just wanted to tag on to something General Izagiri mentioned, as well as General Andrus, having just come back from a trip to Australia and Bala-Katan, as I can give examples literally across the globe where the Marine Corps is engaged with international partners and creating these opportunities. But I'll give one as an example, because I could give examples in Japan, Australia, Norway, Southcom, all over, but I'll hinge on one because it's very important that we start engendering and not have these just one-off engagements where you go do something and that's great, but there's no sustained impact on that. It doesn't affect the enterprise. It doesn't necessarily have long-lasting impact on strategic planning. It's important that we dig in and move something forward over time. And Australia, the exercise, when Talisman Sabre kicks off, the Australian Surgeon General is doing something really awesome. Ironically, it's really easy for us to all get together, work interoperably, have combined integrated teams, whether it's a joint force or with our allies and partners. If it's in a third location, like Afghanistan, all of a sudden it's not hard to do that. But when you try to do it on your own soil or their soil, there's a lot of challenges with that. But Australia, being a key partner for all of us, this surgeon, she's digging in really hard. And Talisman Sabre, she's pushing the boundaries of what are her authorities as the Surgeon General under her operational hat. And they are launching a multinational role too, not just to play, not just to train, but to provide actual support in a multinational format and an operational cloak around it so that she can manage the credentialing and privileging challenges that are inherent in that when you start trying to bring countries together. And so that's an exciting opportunity. It's a train as we fight construct that's being brought, home in an exercise, and I anticipate that's going to be enduring. And other things that we've been working on Australia with our MRF-D rotation, our Marine Rotational Force Darwin, as you know, we're up there for extended periods every year, and been trying to get where we can go inside the walls of their trauma centers, the very ones where we send Marines, sailors, anybody who's there, because that's going to happen. And in a point in place of need, we need heads and beds. And so anything we can do to build relationships is a great thing, but we've cracked the nut on trying to get through some credentialing challenges in another country. And first it was one of our providers, then 3, and now there's 6. Next year we're aiming for 15, that by the time they step off from the West Coast, they're credentialed and can roll in and train side by side with the trauma teams in Australia inside their facilities and bring the beauty of what all that comes to pass. It's a great opportunity with our partners over there because we can learn from each other in the trauma field. And let me tell you something, they can teach our providers up front a ton about infectious disease that's unique to that aspect of the world, and build those relationships so that we train as we fight, we build those relationships and that integrated and that interoperability in garrison so that it's the connective tissue is there. And when there's a pop-off, they're not like, then we're trying to do it in real time. So it's all forward progress, it's exciting. There's examples around the world where, similar things, but I would say that's probably the best example of where the ball is moving down the football field to get us in a train as we fight integrated fashion. It's progress. It's not perfect yet, and it's not complete. It's not where we want it, but it's in a better place than it's been in previous years. So I think that's a good news story.
Yep. And
Oh, did you?
I
I'm
was
sorry.
just going to say for the National Guard, GHE falls under the portfolio of my office, and of course with this state partnership programs, when we're looking at LISCO, I think having that joint training with our partners to make sure that, look, we talk about recruiting issues and retention with providers. If we need to look to our allies and partners to help fill in some of the gaps, we need to start training with them now. It's not unprecedented. So, even New Jersey Guard, we have in the past, one of our state partners is Albania. We've been partners with them for 25 years. So we've deployed with them to Afghanistan 5 times as a joint team. It's not unprecedented, maybe not as a medical team, but as a team, but that doesn't mean that that can't happen in the future. We getting more of that partnership to train together. The Oregon National Guard has helped Vietnam, which is one of their partners, to establish an international trauma life support center, so they can do some trauma training on their own. So things like that. One thing I see the challenges, and I agree with Admiral Miller that having all of our partners cooperate, collaborate, when we're out there. I've seen it myself. I've been, one time I went to Albania and we're there for our engagement, and then I see a Compo 1 Army unit there that we had no idea was going to be there. So I think if we need to collaborate more so that when we're doing, if we're doing training, the country's not getting duplicative training. We've had times where one of our states would go to do TCCC training with the country, and not knowing that another team had been there already and did it like the month before. So, I think the coordination could be better, but we can work on that internally.
Well, I think I'm flipping back to, and I know there's the INDOPACOM surgeon, past, present, probably future in this room, but it's having a GHE strategy map is important, and we worked on that when I was out in INDOPACOM, so we don't have what I used to call random acts of GHE and things that are just not at all synchronized. It's a waste of resources, it's a waste of time, and it's not good for the countries that we're trying to support and work with. So having those 5-year strategy maps from the combatant command level that we are then all in support of is really important. But to General Andrus's point, looking at it through a coordinated, collaborated, joint lens, and then how do we build on the efforts of each other so our resources are well placed and well utilized and not duplicative or seem random, because it frustrates the countries that we work with also. So room to grow there, but I think it started. We started getting some 5-year strategy maps with a couple countries, and I think that's the future for that.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Ashley Ross. I'm from Wounded Warrior Project. I have been listening to what you've been saying about medical readiness, and I know mental health is a big part of that. You have mentioned that multiple times. At Wounded Warrior Project, we get calls from active duty service members that are experiencing signs and symptoms of PTSD, depression, anxiety. They call us because they know that we have programs that can help. I know General Izagari, you're familiar with our partner Home Base in Boston. They call us because they know they need help, they want treatment, but on the flip side, they're afraid to tell their behavioral health provider, their primary care provider. They don't want to go through the formal channels at DoD because they're afraid it's the beginning of the end of their career. What can we tell those service members to let them know and reassure them, yes, we can get them help, but we also want to partner with their chain of command to get them medically ready?
There was an echo. I couldn't.
Yeah.
Can you kind of
Unfortunately, there's an echo behind you. We heard the mental health piece. We heard the 2 systems, but.
I was just solving all the world's problems up here, and you guys couldn't hear it. I'm so sorry. So I work with Wounded Warrior Project, and what I was saying is that we get on the daily calls from service members that want help for PTSD, they want treatment, but they don't want to go through their chain of command because they're afraid that it's going to be a black mark, the end of their career. How can we talk with them and let them know, yes, we can help, they can take advantage of our services, but also we want to involve their command so they are medically ready?
So first off, and again, you know, the Brandon Act's out there, which obviously they can leverage the chain of command, but even before the Brandon Act, for any mental health appointment, there's a self-referring process that individual can simply call any mental health department and say, I need an appointment. Obviously, they can go to an ER and say, I need an appointment. Again, the last part of your question, like I said, it's just unfortunately there's an echo behind you, but so my first comment would be is they already have that capability. Just tell them, you know, find your local MTF, call their mental health department, and they'll be able to schedule an appointment, or they'll be able to refer you for an appointment. If the question was more than also, though, how do we help them involve the chain of command when they don't want to involve the chain of command, you know, it was a very interesting thing that I had happen when I was in Afghanistan. We had an unfortunate event. It was actually an Army soldier who had committed suicide. I had my mental health providers. I had actually, it was, I think, the 82nd Cab commander at the time, phenomenal commander, sitting at my table in Afghanistan because he was worried that he did not know what was going on with his sailor or his soldier who had been seen at the Roll 3. And as they're talking, you're hearing both sides of the story, but one of it is obviously we want you to have access to care. We want to decrease stigma. But by the same token, I've got a commander who says, hey, you know, particularly in this environment, I am their family. And after about 10 minutes of them talking past each other, finally the colonel goes, hey, I got a question. Have we ever asked that soldier whether or not they're willing to share this information with the chain of command? And now realize they're at a little different point from when they're calling you, but you know, I look over at my mental health provider, I'm like, hey, can we? Sure. Do you know how many soldier, sailor, and airmen at CAF for the rest of the year denied that we could contact their chain of command? 0. And again, the point being, you may be a little mature, you know, premature in the evaluation, but I think what's going on is once that soldier, sailor, airman, Marine Guardsman, you know, makes the decision, I need help, I think they're a lot more willing to open up to their commands, et cetera. So my advice would be, number one, you can self-refer. And then number two, I think all of our mental health providers always need to be thinking, how are we connecting with the command? There are things, as you know, within the DoD that allow reporting to the command. And I would say those should be reported, but I would also say, you know, please just work with your patients and don't yourself put up this artificial barrier. You know, to me, it's patient preference, patient choice. But obviously, I think as you all are working with individuals, that communication helps them open up more and start to recognize, hey, you know, my sergeant could potentially help me with this. Because we all see what happens on the flip side, right? Joe's not at work again today. What's wrong with Joe? All of a sudden, we're starting to label Joe negatively, not because Joe's getting mental health help, but Joe's never at work and nobody knows what's wrong with Joe. And so that would be my advice.
I'd just add, I think leadership is laser focused on that asking for help is a sign of strength, not a sign of weakness. So, you know, having been up at the headquarters as the Deputy Surgeon General for 3 years and then the Air Force Surgeon General for the last 9 months, I've seen the senior service chiefs, the vice chairman of the Joint Chief, talk about how they would actually use mental health when it was, you know, needed. And so to destigmatize, I think all of the services up here have mental health now in primary care clinics, so that you don't have, if you're afraid to go or you're concerned about going to the mental health clinic, you can get help in a more generic place. We have, you know, tele-mental health, you know, and then I guess I'd add too that the younger people that serve right now, as opposed to my generation and the people almost as old as me, don't have as much stigma about it. They're a little more confident with going. And so I'd offer some data to say that in the last decade, we've had a significant increase in people accessing mental health, you know, like 4 or 5-fold in the Air Force. And I think that is maybe you could say that's emblematic of increased stress, but I believe that that's, you know, help-seeking behavior becoming more normalized in an increasingly stressful time. So thank you for what you do with the Wounded Warrior Project as well.
One other tool I would offer for the toolbox is the chaplains, because they may be willing to go talk to a chaplain. And the thing that people sometimes forget You don't need to be religiously oriented to go talk to like the right chaplain. I mean, the chaplains can talk to anybody, and so that's a little bit less threatening. But the chaplains also know how to kind of assess when they need to get to mental health, and can help them gain the personal fortitude to go either get to mental health or talk to their chain of commander and so on. So that's another tool you want to use.
And I think what you may be encountering is the idea that, hey, if I have to answer this on my security clearance, then it's going to negatively impact me. I mean, that has been addressed through law. It's not that accessing mental health services. Now, just like, a knee injury that prevents me from doing my job, or a back injury or something like that, I mean, it is the capability, what we can treat to versus seeking help. And certainly none of that is visible on promotion boards or that sort of thing. So I think addressing what their true fear is that, hey, yes, in the past, there was a concern regarding this. That has been addressed through the policy, and now it really comes back to what would be residual that can't be treated. And we'll work through that with you as we work through your treatment.
Thank you. It's very helpful.
So we have 6.5 minutes. We're going to try to take these 2 questions and then hopefully time for a quick summary. So, Captain?
Good morning. Thank you for the discussion. Sam Espiritu. I'm the medical director of TRICARE Pacific. Yesterday, Mr. Hurst brought up a comment about decreasing training requirements that I think got an overwhelmingly positive response from this crowd. In 2016, the Army Press Corps published an article, Lying to Ourselves, and this article detailed how the number of training days required to complete all the mandatory training far exceeded the available training days. So this mandatory training increased significantly since 2002. Non-compliance is not an option, but it's impossible to meet these requirements. So my question for you as the SG level, is there a discussion about modifying the training requirements and going in line with SecDef's priority of the increasing warrior lethality? Because I think, as many of us know, most of that training or much of that training does not fall in line with that. Thank you.
So short answer, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, from the Army all the way top level down, and is active engagement in what training is bringing value and what training can we give people back more time.
And I think we heard yes from the other 2 also.
Yeah, and not only that, action taken, and it's not nearly as far as it needs to go, but this year from Surgeon General's desk I put out, there were 8 training requirements across all of Navy medicine on behalf of the Navy. Now the problem you run into, obviously, you're working in the Department of the Navy, you're working in DHA, you start to add, so I think we need to work across ourselves to answer that better.
That's a good point. And we're at the DHA delighted to hear Mr. Hurst's comments, and we're working collaboratively because we have computer training on our side, you have computer training, and all that needs to be reconciled. So thank you.
I will tell you who that hits really hard is the reserve and guard, I'm sure, because the mandatory training requirements, just the thou shalt you will, basic administrative requirements, eats up a significant portion of our drill weekends that we have to train our sailors to execute what we need them to be focusing on is training to their operational medicine platforms and everything that we're going to ask them to go out the door. So it's a real conundrum these days. It's like it makes our head hurt every time there's a new training that comes down. We're like, well, there goes another 2 hours of a drill weekend. So we're all in and looking forward to the reduction.
Let's try to get the last question.
Good morning. Thanks for taking my question. So in a previous job, I was supervising the Air Force's Traumatic Brain Injury Center, and during that orientation learned that we do not use the ANAM, the Automated Neurological Assessment, for the treatment or diagnosis of TBI, which surprised me, but I confirmed those facts with some neurologist and neuropsychologist buddies. So then I thought, well, there must be some research value to all of these ANAMs that we're giving, did a lit review, and found nothing. So if there is no clinical or diagnostic value to the ANAM, and there's really no actionable research that's being produced by it, I was hoping you could tell us why we're spending tens of thousands of man-hours a year still doing it.
Well, I'll take that one. We actually are using it, and it's both being used for acute events, but as you know, we now have a cognitive monitoring program across the force, and we think it will be a good way to longitudinally surveil the force. We clearly are actively looking at alternatives to the ANAM. Something clearly it needs to get to the point where it is technologically, we have a technology debt there, and so that it's much easier to both administer and take. So I would, certainly we can talk offline. Tracy Lattimore, who's in the audience, and a number of the folks from Harpo can fill you in on where we're trying to go with that. Kathy Lee runs our brain health program, and she would be a great resource, and she's also here in the audience. So thanks for the question.
Thanks.
All right, so we clearly are coming to the end, and so I'd like to give an opportunity to each of you to provide some wisdom to the group as the final comments that we're making today from this august panel. So why don't we start from the other end and work this way? So over to you, General Andrews.
So we just have a couple minutes, so I'll be very short, but I just want to say thank you for what you're doing every day. We heard some things that are really important, and that has to do with getting more, I guess, autonomy or authority down at echelons so that you can make decisions locally. Talked about healthcare being local. Talked about the need to integrate across. I would just ask that you lean in, listen to what you're hearing today. As you have questions, provide the feedback up through the questions, because I guarantee you, Dr. Farrar and the rest of us are very interested in making sure you have answers that you need.
Just want to say, be patient. We know that there are challenges, but this team here is working on addressing a lot of that, along with our leadership. But we, always want to hear your ideas, because we know a lot of the greatest ideas come from out in the field. I also want to say thank you. I want to acknowledge my team here, who is phenomenal. I think they've got the greatest team ever, just saying. And we collaborate with the Army Surgeon General's office, as well as the Army and Air National Guard surgeons' offices, and they're represented here as well. And I want to say thank you to them as well.
Also want to just say thank you, and I know you've heard it several times from many different speakers, but readiness and healthcare delivery are integrated, they're integrally linked, and it takes the efforts and the collaboration and integration of the entirety of the force to get there and to get the job done. So always looking for ways to lean in, work together, find solutions, look over the horizon, try to figure out where we're going 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 years out, and just understand that the challenges are opportunities, and just keep moving forward. And it's time and effort well spent, because you are definitely part of the best healthcare enterprise in the country, maybe in the world. And so just roll through the challenges and pop out the other side.
Yeah, no, hey, for me, just sincerely, thank you for what you do every day. Again, you hear it from us, but the direct care system is a national gem. And within that national gem, without that, you cannot support the national security strategy. You cannot support the national defense strategy. So thank you for what you do. If you're wearing this uniform, my request of you is that you find problems, you fix problems, or you elevate problems. Fail fast and run with scissors.
Yeah, I just join my colleagues in thanking you. The magic happens at our MTFs, where we generate ready medics and medically ready airmen, sailors, soldiers, and Marines. I hope you all have a sense of urgency, because I think what's changed it'll be 36 years since graduating USU on the 20th of May, is the dimension of time. Is that we're not going to have 9 months to bring in 200,000 troops and all of the support like we did for the first Iraq War. We are going to have to be ready, pre-positioned, trained. There won't even be enough time to do just-in-time training. So, I hope you have a sense of urgency for all the things that we talked about today, because there will be very little time.
Yeah, I'll add my thanks and acknowledgement of what we are asking of you. We are asking a lot of you to lead collectively during this time, and as you've heard, doing that together is always better. So a final thought from me is you don't have to go it alone. Actually, going it together is much more reasonable. You don't have to have all the answers. We often gain a lot of answers from each other, and a math equation that helps me remember this is hardship shared is hardship divided. Joy shared is joy multiplied. Thank you.
And on behalf of everyone here, I want to give our hearty thanks to you and also to the whole audience for a very informative 2 hours. Thank you.